Prologue: Shadows of Silverfang. The full moon cast an otherworldly glow over the Silverfang estate, its silvery light illuminating the vast expanse of the mansion grounds. Within, all was silent, save for the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the grand halls. Alpha Jackson Silverfang stood alone on the balcony of his office, his piercing brown eyes scanning the distant trees. His reputation preceded him: ruthless, untouchable, the kind of man who ruled with an iron fist. But even a king, it seemed, could not escape the consequences of his own choices. Jackson was more than just a powerful pack leader. He was a father to two beautiful twin daughters, Mara and Clara, who deserved far more than what his busy schedule allowed. The twins' laughter had grown more distant, their smiles dimmer, and for the first time in his life, Jackson felt the weight of something he couldn't control. It was time to make a change, but nothing could prepare him for what was about to enter his life. Welcome back to my channel. This is an audiobook for the Billionaire Alpha's Rejected Mate, a tale of love, betrayal, werewolves, and redemption set in a world where love and hatred collide. Written and narrated by Cauliflower Campbell. If you're new here, my channel creates stories for adults and teenagers, with lessons and experiences to learn from. Our videos are in different genres, and also in different forms. There are full-length audiobooks, and short-chaptered audiobooks. Go to my channel page, and check out the playlists. We post mainly on Saturdays. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more fantasy, romance, thriller, mystery, suspense, and adventure. Prepare yourself for a breathtaking adventure filled with werewolves, forbidden magic, and a love that defies destiny. Let the story continue. Chapter 1: The Job Interview. The morning sun poured its golden light over the towering glass skyscraper in downtown Lycan Ridge, home to Silverfang Enterprises. The air buzzed with the rhythm of a city always in motion, but atop the highest floor, behind walls of glass and steel, Alpha Jackson Silverfang sat in silence. Jackson, 28, and already a billionaire many times over, was the embodiment of controlled power. His muscular frame filled the sleek designer suit he wore like a second skin. Tousled black hair framed a face carved from marble, sharp jawline, full lips, and piercing brown eyes that missed nothing. But despite the empire he ruled, Jackson was a man haunted by loneliness. 12 years ago, his mate had vanished under mysterious circumstances, leaving him with twin daughters, Mara and Clara, who were now blossoming into young women, each a mirror of her father's smoldering intensity. They had his dark curls, expressive brown eyes, and an uncanny gift of sensing dishonesty, which had become more apparent with each passing year. This morning was different. Instead of leaving his daughters at home under the watchful gaze of the house staff, Jackson brought them to his office. Today they were part of the decision. He had finally accepted the truth. His daughters needed more than what hired help and bodyguards could offer. They needed warmth, guidance, and affection, something only a live-in nanny could provide. Mara and Clara, both wearing matching navy dresses and their signature mischievous smirks, sat side by side in their father's private office lounge, watching each applicant come and go. And one by one, the candidates faltered. "She smells like perfume and fake smiles," Mara whispered after the first interview. "And the second one kept checking her phone," Clara added, rolling her eyes. Jackson pinched the bridge of his nose. The girls were picky, but he couldn't blame them. They had been through enough. Then she walked in. Camille Blackthorne, or at least that was the name on the resume. She was 23, with long waves of fiery red hair cascading down her back and pale skin that glowed in the filtered office light. Her eyes were a shade too intense, a little too knowing, like someone who'd lived more than her years would suggest. She carried herself with quiet grace, yet every step hinted at restrained power. But she wasn't here just to care for children. She was the daughter of Alpha Tobias of the Iron Fang Pack, Silverfang's oldest enemy, a battle-scarred wolf who once ruled vast lands before his downfall. He blamed Jackson Silverfang for the crumbling of his empire, and Camille had been raised on stories of betrayal and ruin. Now she was here, undercover, living the lie her father demanded. Camille Blackthorne was a construct. In truth, she was Camille Ironfang. Her mission: infiltrate the Silverfangs, gain access to their home, earn their trust, and collect intel that could end the Silverfang line. But Camille had her own doubts. Her heart warred with loyalty to her father and a growing ache she couldn't explain. Even before she met Jackson, she had questioned her mission. What if the stories were wrong? What if the man they painted as a villain wasn't what he seemed? Jackson looked up as she entered. His gaze met hers, and something electric sparked in the space between them. He straightened in his chair. Camille Blackthorne? Yes, Alpha Silverfang. Thank you for the opportunity. He nodded, gesturing toward the couch where Mara and Clara sat. Before we begin, I'd like you to meet the real interviewers. Camille smiled gently and knelt before the girls. Hi there. You must be Mara and Clara. I've heard a lot about you. Your dad tells me you love puzzles and astronomy. I brought something. From her satchel, she pulled out 2 small star charts and a puzzle box crafted from old wood. The twins leaned in immediately, eyes wide with surprise and interest. Clara took the chart. You know constellations? I do. And if you let me stay, I can teach you how to spot them all, even from the rooftop. Mara grinned. And the puzzle? A riddle box, Camille said. Only the cleverest can open it. Think you're up for the challenge? The girls exchanged a look of pure delight. Jackson, watching quietly from behind his desk, felt something stir in his chest. It had been so long since he'd seen them smile like that. The interview continued, but it wasn't the standard Q&A. Camille's warmth melted the room. She answered Jackson's logistical questions with precision, but always redirected her focus back to the girls. She asked about their routines, their favorite books, their friends. Jackson leaned back in his chair, arms folded across his broad chest. He listened, watched. There was something strange about her, familiar almost, but he couldn't place it. Still, her presence calmed the storm that usually raged inside him. That was rare. Dangerous, even. When the interview ended, he looked at his daughters. What do you think? She's the one, they said in unison. Camille blinked, surprised. For a moment, she forgot the mission, forgot the weight of her father's expectations. Then it's settled, Jackson said, extending a hand. Welcome to the Silverfang household, Miss Blackthorne. As their hands met, skin brushing skin, a strange current passed between them. Camille swallowed hard, masking her unease. She was in. Phase 1 complete, but as the Silverfang twins giggled beside her and Jackson's lingering gaze followed her every movement, Camille couldn't shake the feeling that destiny had just shifted in a way no one had predicted, and she wasn't sure if she'd come out of this mission unscathed. Chapter 2. First Days at Silverfang Mansion. Camille stood in awe as the wrought iron gates of the Silverfang estate opened, revealing a sprawling mansion nestled among the misty woods of Lycan Ridge. The estate was magnificent, a blend of old-world grandeur and modern opulence. Ivy crept up marble columns, and tall windows gleamed like polished gems under the soft sunlight. It was a kingdom, and she, a carefully planted spy, had just crossed its borders. The butler, a tall and prim gentleman named Garrick, greeted her at the entrance. Miss Blackthorne, welcome. The Alpha has instructed us to make you comfortable. She was led through the vast halls of the mansion, her footsteps echoing against the gleaming floors. Every corner spoke of wealth and heritage. Oil paintings of ancestors hung on the walls, chandeliers sparkled above, and the scent of cedar and roses lingered faintly in the air. Camille's room was nothing short of regal. The ceiling soared high above, and thick velvet drapes framed windows that overlooked the back gardens. Her bed was carved from mahogany, draped with silver and cream linens, a walk-in closet, already stocked with elegant clothing in her size, soft cashmere sweaters, silk blouses, tailored slacks, and designer flats, waited for her. She stared at the wardrobe. This wasn't just accommodation, it was assimilation. Keys to the estate were handed to her, along with a detailed itinerary of her responsibilities. Garrick escorted her on a thorough tour, pointing out everything from the Rose Garden maze to the private cinema and indoor pool. Then, they stopped outside a grand set of double doors. "This," Garrick said with a note of gravity, "is the Alpha's quarters." Camille couldn't help but glance inside. The door was slightly ajar, dark velvet curtains swayed gently, silver sheets caught the fading sunlight like silk. There was something magnetic about the space, commanding, mysterious, like its owner. She took a step closer. "Never enter without permission," Garrick said firmly, snapping her from her trance. She nodded, feigning nonchalance, but her heart had skipped a beat. They continued to the twins' rooms, two conjoined suites filled with books, plush toys, and colorful decor. Camille was briefed on their schedule, school drop-offs, ballet classes, evening meals, and their sacred Saturday ice cream ritual. It was a rhythm of normalcy in a world cloaked in power and secrets. That night her father called. "Remember why you're there," Alpha Tobias growled over the encrypted line. "Watch him. Learn his routines. Get into his study. We strike when we know his weakness." "Yes, father," Camille whispered, her voice laced with doubt. But as the days passed, something began to shift. Camille cared for Mara and Clara like they were her own. The twins had a way of peeling back her guarded heart with laughter and questions, stories and hugs. They showed her the treehouse their father had built, insisted she join them for tea parties, and made her pinky swear to keep their secrets. Jackson observed from afar. He noticed how the mansion seemed to breathe easier when Camille was around, how Mara and Clara glowed in her presence, and he found himself returning home earlier, lingering longer in doorways to hear her voice. She read to them each night, tales of brave alphas and their Luna queens. The girls would giggle, whispering about the alphas they found dreamy. One night, as Jackson stood unseen in the hallway, Clara asked, "Camille, who's your alpha?" Camille hesitated, her voice soft. "I haven't found my mate yet." Jackson exhaled quietly, a small breath of unexpected relief curling in his chest. Weeks passed, and with every passing day, Camille's conviction began to erode. The monster her father described was not the man she saw. Jackson was firm, yes, and disciplined, but he was also deeply thoughtful. Fresh roses appeared in her room, always with handwritten notes. "Thank you for caring for them. You're doing beautifully." Camille tried to maintain her mission. She truly did. One morning she snuck into the estate gym, hidden behind a row of training mats, watching Jackson lift heavy weights with fluid, lethal precision. His shirt was discarded, sweat glistening on defined muscle. Her breath caught when she saw his wolf, silver gray and regal, shift seamlessly and lope off into the woods. He was power incarnate, but he was also gentle. Every morning she rose to the scent of freshly brewed coffee in the kitchen, one cup waiting for her with a note, "For the nanny who runs this house better than I do." And at night, when he came home, the security tightened, the gates locked down, and she saw the lines of worry on his face relax only when the twins ran into his arms. Camille was wounded by something she couldn't name. Loyalty? Guilt? The pull of fate? She told herself she couldn't afford to feel this way, but as she watched Jackson tuck his daughters into bed, whispering softly to them before quietly walking away, she felt the tremble of a truth too dangerous to speak. She was falling for the enemy, and she didn't know how to stop. Chapter 3: The Man Behind the Alpha. Camille had never been more torn. Each passing day in the Silverfang mansion eroded the purpose that brought her there. What began as a mission wrapped in vengeance had evolved into something far more complex. Camille found herself watching Jackson through new eyes, not as the enemy her father painted him to be, but as a man, a father, a leader. It began with the charity foundations. She stumbled upon files in Jackson's study one evening, not locked away, but neatly organized. Dozens of nonprofits, all supported by Silver Fang enterprises, ranging from orphanages to medical outreach programs. It wasn't for publicity. There were no press releases, no social media accolades. It was simply something he did, quietly, consistently. That year, he planned to attend the opening of one of the foundations in person. As always, his daughters were scheduled to give their welcome speech. But this time, he invited Camille to come along. She remembered the knock on her door that night. When she opened it, Jackson stood there, holding a black garment bag. The girls insisted, he said with a smile, eyes warm. They want you there, and so do I. Inside was a sleek maroon Dior designer gown, simple but breathtaking. She was stunned. It's beautiful, she breathed. So are you, he replied, voice low. And then he was gone. She blushed and went back inside. Camille helped the girls with their speeches in the days that followed. Mara was confident, Clara more nervous. But Camille's calming presence turned the process into something joyful. The night of the event arrived. Camille dressed the twins in pink tweed dresses, curling their hair and adding delicate pearl barrettes. Only when she slipped into her gown and met them in the driveway did she realize. Her maroon gown perfectly complemented Jackson's dark tuxedo. He paused when he saw her, something raw flickering in his gaze. You look beautiful, he said. This time, it wasn't just a compliment. It was a confession. The Alpha was slowly beginning to like Camille. The event was held in a grand open-air venue strung with golden lights. Camille was awestruck, not just by the wealth on display, but by how seamlessly Jackson navigated the elite. He moved like a king among nobles, always grounded, always composed. When the girls took the stage to speak, Jackson stood beside Camille, one hand resting lightly on her back. She could feel the heat of his touch through the fabric of her gown. Mara spoke with confidence, Clara with gentle conviction. When they were done, the applause was thunderous. Afterward, they all slipped away to a private amusement park arranged for the children supported by the foundation. The girls dragged Camille and Jackson from game to game. Laughter echoed in the air, light and full. Come on! Mara called, pointing toward the roller coaster. It's for grown-ups, Clara added, eyes gleaming with mischief. Camille hesitated, but the girls cheered them on. With a chuckle, Jackson offered his hand. We're doing this. She took it. On the ride, her grip tightened on his as the world spun around them. Her screams blended with laughter. When it ended, her legs trembled. Jackson laughed. Truly laughed, a deep, unrestrained sound that sent a thrill down her spine. She had seen him smile. She had heard him chuckle. But never this. She stared at him, breathless and overwhelmed. In that moment, a wild, dangerous thought passed through her mind. I could have a child with this man. I could be part of this family. And as if her thought summoned him, Jackson turned. His gaze met hers and lingered. A look that said he saw her, truly saw her. Something ancient stirred in both of them. Jackson felt the pull deep within, the unmistakable resonance of fate. His wolf stirred restlessly. Camille was his mate. There was no denying it now. That night, after the girls were bathed and tucked in, Camille left their room quietly, only to find Jackson waiting just outside. Couldn't sleep? He asked. She shook her head. Too much in my mind. Walk with me. They moved through the quiet halls, then out onto the balcony overlooking the woods. The moon hung low, bathing them in silver light. You ever wonder how people become who they are? He asked. Camille turned to him, sensing the vulnerability beneath the question. Jackson's voice was soft. Morgan, my ex. She was my Luna. Or so I thought. But when the twins were born, something changed. She wasn't ready to be a mother. She walked out, disappeared. No explanation, just gone. Camille's breath caught. She had expected some story of betrayal, but not abandonment. Not pain. I tried to protect the girls from it. Filled the house with people to distract them, but none of it worked. Until you came. She couldn't look away. His honesty disarmed her. You're not what I expected, she whispered. He smiled sadly. I think we're both more than what people expect. That night, Camille wrote only a few vague lines in her report to her father. Something about Jackson attending a charity event. Nothing more. She couldn't bring herself to write the truth. The truth was that Camille was falling in love. She became a cornerstone in the girls' lives. She taught them how to stand tall, how to be gentle and fierce at once. She helped them with school projects, cheered at their ballet rehearsals, and cried when Clara performed her solo. Jackson watched, always just close enough to see, just far enough to give her space. But his wolf growled every time another man looked at her too long, and every morning he brewed her coffee, setting it out before she woke. It was his silent confession. He couldn't tell her, not yet. He was her alpha. But he didn't want her love because of the bond. He wanted it because she chose him, and deep down, Camille was beginning to wonder if her mission had never been about vengeance at all. Maybe it was about fate. Chapter 4. Secrets at Midnight. The night was draped in soft velvet darkness, the Silver Fang mansion quiet but for the occasional whisper of wind against the grand windows. Camille found herself in the kitchen, barefoot, her fingers wrapped around a warm cup of tea. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, casting shadows that danced across the polished countertops and marble floors. She didn't expect company at this hour. But then he appeared, Jackson. Dressed in a black t-shirt and dark joggers, his hair slightly tousled as if he too couldn't sleep. He paused when he saw her, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked. She nodded. "Thought tea might help." He stepped into the light. "I was going for wine. Care to join me?" She hesitated only a second before nodding. Moments later, they sat on a long bench by the wide stone fireplace in the kitchen, sipping red wine from tall glasses. The fire warmed the room, and something else began to simmer between them. Silence stretched comfortably at first, filled with flickering firelight and the occasional clink of glass. "What do you dream of?" he asked suddenly, his voice low, almost husky. Camille blinked, surprised by the intimacy of the question. She laughed, light and playful, trying to chase away the sudden gravity in the air. "A blue Lamborghini. Not red, not black. Blue. It has to be blue." He raised a brow, amused. "And where are you driving this very specific car?" "To my lake house," she said, grinning. "Something small and peaceful. A garden, a dock, maybe a canoe I'll never use." Jackson chuckled, the sound warm and unguarded. "You don't strike me as the canoe type." "Exactly," she said, her smile faltering just slightly. "But I like to dream I might be." He tilted his head, watching her, not just looking, but memorizing. Every expression, every word, every shift in her voice. That night, something changed. It was the beginning of a quiet yearning, the kind that didn't need declarations, the kind that grew stronger in silence. Camille didn't know what to make of it. The more time she spent in the Silver Fang estate, the more she saw of the man behind the alpha title. She wasn't just falling for his strength or his undeniable magnetism. She was falling for his heart, for how he loved his daughters, fiercely and without condition, for how he remembered every detail of her day, for how he left her coffee every morning. Jackson, on the other hand, was no longer trying to suppress his feelings. At night, his dreams were filled with her laugh, the sound of her footsteps down the hall, the way her eyes softened when she looked at Mara and Clara. He woke up restless, his wolf pacing inside him, craving her presence, wanting more. One evening, as they watched the twins perform a silly dance they'd choreographed in their room, Camille turned to him. "Why don't you have any portraits of Morgan?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he exhaled slowly. "Because I don't want them to remember her as someone who stayed. She didn't." Camille frowned gently. "But she was your Luna, the girl's mother." Jackson's eyes turned distant. "She was never my mate. My father arranged the bond, marked us, said it was for the good of the pack. And Morgan, she was never really in love with me. I tried, Camille. I gave her everything I could. My time, my name, my devotion. But it wasn't enough." He paused, his voice tight with old pain. "She wanted more. more than me. So one day she left, no warning. The girls were barely a year old. I woke up and she was gone. Camille felt her heart twist. You don't want them to hate her. He nodded. But I won't lie to them either. They deserve better than to grow up surrounded by her ghost. The fire cracked, breaking the stillness. Camille stared at him, her chest aching. He wasn't the monster her father described. Not even close. This man was broken, yes, but still whole in the ways that mattered. Compassionate, protective, honest, and fiercely loyal to his girls. And here she was, torn between two worlds. Her duty to the Iron Fang pack, to her father, Alpha Tobias, who carried the scars of the war with Silver Fang. And her heart, which had begun to beat for the very man she was meant to betray. That night, as Jackson poured them another glass of wine, their hands brushed. The contact lingered longer than it should have. Neither pulled away. Camille's voice was barely a whisper. Maybe you're not so bad after all. Jackson met her gaze, firelight dancing in his eyes. Maybe we both aren't. They chuckled, and it was quiet. In that quiet moment, beneath the ancient beams of the Silver Fang kitchen, with secrets poised like shadows around them, Camille felt something unravel. She no longer knew where her loyalties lay, but she did know this. She wanted to know the man behind the Alpha, and he wanted her to stay. Chapter 5. Camping under the full moon. The Silver Fang woods stretched wide and wild beneath the waxing silver moon, the trees tall and ancient, whispering stories through their rustling leaves. Alpha Jackson Silverfang stood at the edge of his estate with a quiet, unreadable expression as he packed the final items into the SUV. The time had come. His daughters, Mara and Clara, were nearing the age when their wolves would awaken, and Jackson, ever the thoughtful father, wanted them to embrace this change with peace, love, and security. That's why he'd chosen a camping trip. Far away from the echoes of duty and politics, somewhere sacred, nestled deep in the Silver Fang territory, a place where his daughters could shift for the first time under the light of a full moon. Camille, ever the steady force of calm in their lives, packed everything they'd need: blankets, sleeping bags, enough food for the weekend, marshmallows for roasting, and clothes for all types of weather. She moved efficiently through the mansion, double-checking supplies, ensuring the girls had their favorite snacks, and humming softly as she helped the twins prepare. By late afternoon they were on the road, laughter echoing in the car as the girls pointed out animals they spotted and Camille shared silly camping stories. Jackson drove in silence, but with a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips, watching Camille through the rearview mirror. She was radiant with joy, and it was infectious. By the time they reached the clearing, an ancient Silver Fang site surrounded by tall birches and open skies, the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon. Jackson stepped into alpha mode, setting up the camp efficiently. Tents rose under his command, and a gentle fire was lit with practiced ease. Once camp was secure, he made coffee the old-fashioned way, boiled over the fire, and handed a steaming mug to Camille. Their fingers brushed. She smiled and took it and whispered, "Thank you." The moon began its ascent, glowing bright and full. The twins, nervous yet excited, looked to their father. "Is it going to hurt?" Clara asked softly. Jackson knelt before them, placing a steady hand on each of their shoulders. "It will feel strange, but you are Silver Fangs. You're strong, and I'll be right here." Camille stepped forward, warmth in her eyes. "Your wolf is a part of you. Trust it. Let it guide you." The girls stood in the moonlight holding hands. Then, it began. Their bones shifted, their forms rippled. Within moments, two majestic brown wolves stood before them, their eyes glowing with excitement and wonder. "You did it," Camille whispered, tears in her eyes. Jackson's chest swelled with pride. His daughters, his strong, brave daughters, had taken their first step into their legacy. Without hesitation, Camille stepped back and shifted as well. Her white wolf form was dazzling under the moonlight, ethereal, graceful. The girls yipped excitedly and bounded toward her, nuzzling and racing in circles. Jackson watched, his silver-gray wolf form hidden just beneath the surface, fighting to break free. But he held back. For now, he wanted to watch. The 3 she-wolves ran through the woods, weaving through trees, leaping over fallen logs. Their joy was pure and untamed. Jackson eventually shifted, his massive silver wolf following quietly, protectively. He ran beside them, the proud father and alpha, keeping pace but letting them lead. When they finally returned to the camp, breathless and energized, they shifted back and wrapped themselves in blankets, laughter bubbling up as they sat around the fire roasting marshmallows. Camille leaned into Jackson's side, not touching, but close enough that their shoulders almost met. "They're incredible," she whispered. He nodded. "You helped them find that strength." She turned her head, her eyes catching his in the firelight. "You've raised them well. You're a good father, Jackson." He looked at her for a long time. His voice, when it came, was soft. "I'm trying to be better." Unbeknownst to them, across the shadows of the woods, a figure watched. Morgan, her presence was cloaked in silence, her posture rigid, her breath shallow. Rage coursed through her veins, hotter than the fire Jackson sat beside. She had returned from wherever she'd disappeared to, drawn by the whispers of the pack, the rumors of the human-turned nanny, the wolf who now stood too close to her daughters, and even closer to the alpha she'd abandoned. Her eyes blazed with jealousy. She watched the white wolf run with her daughters. She saw Jackson smile in a way he never had with her. Her claws dug into the bark of the tree she leaned against, her thoughts spiraling. She had expected to return one day, reclaim her place, her family, her title, but someone else had stepped into the light, and Morgan was consumed by the darkness of knowing it might be too late. Back at the camp, Jackson placed a blanket over the sleeping twins, who had curled up beside each other by the fire. Camille stood nearby, brushing her hair back, her face glowing in the moonlight. He stepped toward her, and for a long moment neither spoke. Then Jackson said, barely above a whisper, "You've given them something I never could." She tilted her head. "What's that?" He smiled. "A mother's warmth." Camille felt the breath catch in her chest. In the heart of the forest, beneath the watchful gaze of the full moon, 2 souls, bound by fate, scarred by duty, stood on the edge of something neither of them could yet name. And in the shadows, a storm brewed, carried by a ghost of their past. The night wasn't done with them yet. Chapter 6. Gifts of the Heart. Dawn broke over the Silverfang estate in soft hues of rose gold and sapphire. The light streamed gently through the curtains, casting a glow across the sleeping mansion. But Alpha Jackson was already awake, earlier than usual, his mind humming with anticipation and nerves he hadn't felt in years. He stood quietly by the window of his study, gazing out at the peaceful grounds. The memory of last night's camping trip still danced in his thoughts. The sound of Camille's laughter echoing through the forest, the sight of her running alongside his daughters in her glorious white wolf form. The image stirred something primal and vulnerable inside him. He'd never known another Luna could exist after Morgan. But Camille wasn't just different. She was everything. That night, by the fire in the kitchen, she had joked about her dreams. A blue Lamborghini, a lake house, a quiet life surrounded by peace. At the time, she had laughed, brushing off her words with a playful smirk, but Jackson remembered every syllable. And so, this morning, he made it happen. The sound of gravel crunching stirred Camille from her sleep. She slipped into her robe and padded to the balcony of her room. Her heart stuttered. Parked in the driveway below was a sleek, dazzling blue Lamborghini Aventador. Its metallic paint shimmered beneath the morning sun like the surface of a clear lake. Camille blinked, then blinked again. Her gaze shifted as Jackson stepped out of the driver's side, dressed in his signature dark suit, hair tousled from the early start. He glanced up, caught her staring, and smiled, a smile that melted every wall she'd carefully built. "Come down," he called. She hurried. Barely tying the belt of her robe, she stepped onto the front steps, heart racing. Jackson held the driver's side door open, revealing a black velvet box on the seat. Inside it was a set of keys, and beneath those, property papers bearing the Silver Fang seal. Camille stared, speechless. "It's the lake house," she whispered. Jackson's eyes softened. "You said it was your dream." Her vision blurred as emotions surged. "Jackson, I didn't mean—" "I know," he interrupted gently. She turned to him, still stunned. "Why?" He stepped closer, his presence enveloping her. "Because you've given me more than I could ever repay. You gave my daughters joy, a home. You gave me hope again. And you've become the woman I never thought I'd meet." Camille's breath hitched. Her hands trembled as she clutched the keys, her pulse thudding violently in her chest. Without thinking, she threw her arms around him. Jackson caught her, strong arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her into the hard plane of his chest. They stood like that for a moment, lost in the quiet. Then she felt it, the change. The air thickened with tension. She looked up. His eyes were darker now, glowing faintly and fixed on her lips. Camille's heart fluttered. His hold tightened. And then, just as his head began to lower, she panicked. "I'm sorry," she whispered, stepping back quickly, putting space between them. Jackson's face fell. "Camille, this is a mistake," she said, avoiding his eyes. "I can't, this isn't—" "Why?" he asked quietly. She shook her head, tears threatening. "Because if I let myself fall you, I'll forget." Jackson took a slow step forward. "Forget what?" She froze. He looked at her like she was the answer to every question he'd never asked. "Forget why you came here." Camille turned away, biting her lip. She couldn't tell him, couldn't reveal the truth behind her presence, her lies, her father's orders. Not now, so she nodded stiffly and murmured, "Thank you for the car. And the house." Then she walked back inside, her heart in pieces. Jackson remained by the car, watching the door close behind her, confused, frustrated, and aching. Inside, Camille closed her bedroom door and leaned against it, clutching the keys to her dream in one hand and the weight of her secret in the other. The gifts of the heart had been given, but at what cost? And how long could she keep her heart from giving in? Chapter 7. Forbidden Truths. The nights had turned warmer, the air scented with pine and distant jasmine, but Camille's thoughts remained tangled in a whirlwind of emotion. Since the morning Jackson gifted her the blue Lamborghini and the lake house, her world had tilted off its axis. Every smile from him, every glance across the room, it all held more weight now, more meaning. But she hadn't told him. Couldn't. Her feet hit the soft earth as she ran through the estate's outer trails, her wolf barely contained under her skin, stretching restlessly beneath. Running had become her escape, her sanity. The soft rustle of trees and rhythm of her breathing drowned the questions, until she heard the snap of a twig, then another. She paused. Before she could react, someone tackled her to the ground with supernatural force. Camille grunted, the wind knocked out of her. She looked up into blazing emerald eyes and long flowing auburn hair. Morgan, the former Luna. Camille's blood ran cold. She knew that face, not from photos but from the features reflected in Mara and Clara. There was no mistaking it now. Morgan's face was twisted in rage. "You little fox," she hissed. "You think you can play mother to my daughters? Mate to my alpha?" Camille struggled beneath her, but Morgan's strength as a former Luna was overwhelming. "I don't want your title," Camille snapped. "I didn't come here for Jackson, but I stayed for them. For him, for your daughters, who you left." Morgan's grip tightened before Camille found the leverage to push her off, sending Morgan stumbling back. Both women rose to their feet, eyes locked. "I left because I was suffocating," Morgan spat. "I deserved more than being a trophy Luna. And now you want to take everything I abandoned?" Camille stepped forward, fire igniting in her eyes. "I didn't take anything, but I'll protect them with everything I have. Your daughters deserve love. Jackson deserves loyalty. And I will give them both." Morgan snarled. "I'm warning you," she growled. Leave now, or I'll ruin you." With that, she shifted into a sleek russet wolf, her growl echoing through the trees, before vanishing into the shadows of the night. Camille stood shaking slightly, but not from fear, from fury. She didn't realize someone had been watching. Behind a nearby tree cloaked by shadows, Jackson Silverfang stood silent, unmoving. He had followed Camille as he often did when she went on evening runs, drawn by instinct, by the fear she might be taken from him. He had heard it all, her defiance, her love, her vow to protect his daughters. A deep growl vibrated in his chest, not of anger, but of possession, of longing. She was his Luna. The truth settled in him like a sunrise. Days passed, and tension hung heavy in the air like a storm waiting to break. Jackson invited Camille to the library, an ancient candlelit room filled with secrets and history. She entered cautiously, finding him at the hearth, dressed in black, his jaw clenched tight. "You wanted to see me?" she asked. He didn't speak immediately. He gestured to a seat across from him, and she obeyed. "There's something I've never told anyone outside my bloodline," Jackson said after a long pause. "But I want you to know. Because I trust you." Camille swallowed hard. "What is it?" He met her eyes. "The Silverfangs have a weakness. During the blood moon, once every 5 years, our strength fades. Our wolves weaken. It's the only time we're truly vulnerable." Her heart stopped. That was it. The strategic advantage her father had been waiting for, the detail that could give Iron Fang the upper hand. Jackson continued, unaware of the war in her heart. "It's why we close the estate and retreat indoors during the blood moon. No one outside the inner circle knows." Camille nodded slowly, carefully masking the tremor in her voice. "Why tell me?" He leaned forward. "Because you matter to me, and I believe in protecting what matters." Her throat burned, her eyes stung. Later that night, she stood alone on the balcony of her room, staring at the stars. In her pocket, her burner phone buzzed. Her father's message glared at her. "Have you found their weakness yet?" Camille's fingers hovered over the keys. The answer was yes. She had the information. She could tip the scales of power in a second. But she didn't. She deleted the message, turned off the phone, and stepped away from the balcony, because love, true love, was no longer a luxury she could deny. And betraying Jackson now, after everything, would shatter more than just her heart. It would destroy the family she had grown to cherish. And for that family, Camille would defy everything, even her own blood. Chapter 8. Morgan's Revenge. The forest air felt sharper, heavier. Something dark was stirring beneath the trees and within hearts. Camille sensed it, an unease that clung to her skin like cold mist. She had not told Jackson the truth, not yet. Every time she looked into his eyes, she felt the truth choking her. But how could she speak it, when silence protected the family she'd grown to love? But secrets don't stay buried. Not forever, far away, cloaked in vengeance and shadows. Morgan paced inside a luxury hotel penthouse, the glow of her laptop painting her face in eerie blue light. She'd spent days hunting for Camille's past, obsessed with tearing apart the woman who had somehow taken her place. Her lips curled into a smirk when the truth flashed before her eyes. Camille wasn't from the Blackthorn pack at all. She was the daughter of Alpha Tobias, Iron Fang's disgraced leader. Rage boiled in Morgan's chest. She remembered Tobias. She had been the one who stripped his pack's magic and spread the lie that it was Jackson's doing. The betrayal, the manipulations, the destruction of a pack she considered a threat to her dominance. And now, Tobias's daughter had wormed her way into Jackson's home. His heart? No. Not on her watch. Driven by fury, Morgan devised a plan and slipped away under the veil of night, making her way to the Iron Fang border. She arrived cloaked, her scent masked. The warriors who approached her were wary, until she called herself an ally. "I have information you'll want," she told the sentries. "About your enemies." Word reached Alpha Tobias quickly. When Morgan was ushered into his darkened war tent, she expected arrogance and cruelty. What she didn't expect was calculation, Still powerful, still ruthless, Tobias regarded her with cold eyes that saw straight through her. "I know who you are," he said without preamble. Morgan didn't flinch. "Then you know I have no loyalty to Silver Fang. I came with a gift." He said nothing, so she continued, voice low. "Every 5 years, during the blood moon, the Silver Fangs weaken. Their wolves are powerless, their security becomes ornamental, and no one outside their pack knows this." She paused, letting the silence do the rest. Tobias raised an eyebrow. "Curious. Why now? Because the she-wolf in your ranks, your daughter? She's forgotten her purpose. She's forgotten you." A flicker of something unreadable crossed Tobias's face. He didn't trust Morgan, but he trusted the opportunity. He dismissed her, but the wheels of war were already turning. Back at Silver Fang Mansion, Camille paced the hallways like a ghost. Every time she passed Jackson's study or caught the scent of his cologne in the corridor, her heart ached. She knew what she had to do. She had to tell him. But she couldn't, and when she looked into Mara and Clara's joyful faces, she knew that revealing the truth might rip them apart. She whispered to the silence, "Just a little more time." That night the stars glowed crimson. The blood moon rose. Inside the estate, the Silver Fangs had already sealed the gates. They had no reason to expect an attack. No one outside their bloodline had ever known about the blood moon weakness. It was sacred, sworn. Until now, the Iron Fang warriors struck with ruthless precision, crossing the borders with weapons enchanted by old forest witches and claws sharpened with vengeance. They knew exactly when to strike, when their enemies would be at their weakest. They breached the estate before the alarms could even scream. Jackson, meanwhile, fought tooth and nail in his study, but even his strength was faltering. He was magnificent, even weakened, but the blood moon stripped him of his edge. One by one, the guards around him fell. They came for him next, a dozen warriors, armed with silver chains. He roared, but they overpowered him, dragging him down with brutal force. Blood stained his shirt, and still he fought, until they drugged him with wolfsbane and locked him in silver restraints. Captured, the great alpha of Silver Fang, brought to his knees. The estate burned in the distance, small fires set to drive the pack indoors. Inside, the remaining Silver Fangs hid or were taken. Someone had betrayed them, and above, the blood moon watched, silent and merciless. War had come to Silver Fang, and nothing would ever be the same again. Chapter 9. Escape to the Lake. The air inside the Iron Fang stronghold was thick with the weight of power and old grudges. Alpha Jackson Silver Fang, chained in silver cuffs that burned into his skin, sat tall and silent in the dimly lit cell. His mind was already racing when the steel doors creaked open, and in walked Alpha Tobias, clad in black, his crimson eyes burning with rage and grim satisfaction. "You didn't think your secrets would remain hidden forever, did you, Silver Fang?" Tobias hissed. Jackson met his stare without flinching. "What are you talking about?" Tobias gave a cruel smile. "Your pack's little blood moon weakness. Someone from inside told me. Someone close to you." At that moment, Jackson's chest tightened. The pain from the silver cuffs dulled in comparison to the searing ache in his heart. He thought of Camille. Her smile, the softness in her touch, the way she made his daughters glow with happiness. His mind fought to reject the thought, but the seed had been planted. Betrayal, or something darker. Tobias laughed lowly and left him there, broken and burning with questions. Camille's voice mingled with the cheerful chorus of Mara and Clara's song as they drove home from ballet. The girls giggled, mimicking twirls with their arms and talking about what flavor of ice cream they wanted for dessert. But as they neared the Silver Fang estate, Camille's instincts kicked in. She slowed the car when she spotted unfamiliar vehicles parked along the estate perimeter. Her eyes locked onto the Iron Fang sigils etched onto the black SUVs. Her heart dropped. Her father had made his move. "Girls, change of plans," she said, masking the panic in her voice with a smile. She made a sharp U-turn and sped off, heading toward the only safe place she could think of, the lake house Jackson had gifted her. Camille clutched the wheel tightly, her wolf snarled within, torn between the pull of blood and the call of her heart. She had betrayed Jackson without meaning to. Somehow, her silence, her omission, had fed into her father's vengeance. They arrived at the lake house just as the sun set behind the horizon. Camille ushered the twins inside, locked every door, drew the curtains, and armed the perimeter with protective charms she learned in her childhood. "Are we on a secret adventure?" Clara asked, her voice a mix of excitement and concern. "Yes, baby," Camille whispered, brushing a hand over her hair. "But I need you both to be very quiet, okay?" The girls nodded. Camille tucked them into bed, kissed their foreheads, and waited until she heard their soft snores before stepping out onto the porch. The moonlight rippled across the lake's surface. Camille sank to her knees on the deck and sobbed silently. She had never wanted this war. She had never expected to fall in love, not with the enemy, not with the alpha her pack blamed for all their losses. But Jackson wasn't the monster they painted him to be. He was a father who loved fiercely, a man with integrity and heartbreak tucked behind his powerful exterior. And now he was in danger, because of her. Her wolf stirred, a silent vow formed within her soul. She would save him. Camille rose, her back straightening, eyes gleaming in the moonlight. The guilt wouldn't fade, but she could still fix this. She began pacing, planning every step. She knew her father's tactics, his strategies, his blind spots. Her mission had changed. It wasn't about gathering intelligence anymore. It was about redemption and love. Tomorrow she'd return to Iron Fang territory to do the unthinkable. She would betray her blood to save her heart, and this time, she wouldn't fail. Chapter 10: The Council and the Fall. The Silver Fang estate was no longer the safe haven it once had been. With Jackson still in captivity and Camille missing from the mansion, tension rose like wildfire, consuming what little peace remained in the pack, and Morgan, beautiful, manipulative, dangerous Morgan, used the absence of the alpha to stir the flames to her favor. Under the pretense of emergency, Morgan summoned the Silver Fang Council, the ancient wolves, gray-haired and heavy with tradition, gathered in the ancestral council hall. As the ex-Luna, she still held a degree of authority in their eyes, especially now that the true alpha was imprisoned and unreachable. She stood at the head of the long stone table, her posture regal, her eyes cold. "The time has come for Silverfang to rise from its ashes," she declared. "We were betrayed from within, not by our enemies, but by someone close to Jackson, someone he trusted." Gasps rippled through the council. "Camille Blackthorn," Morgan said, her voice venomous, or should I say, Camille of Iron Fang, daughter of Alpha Tobias, the very one who orchestrated the attack on us. There was a moment of stunned silence before the council broke into murmurs and hushed debates. "She was the closest to him," an elder said. "She knew about the girls, the routines, the mansion. And how would she know about the blood moon? Only someone on the inside could have revealed that." The room shifted quickly from shock to accusation. Camille, the young woman who had warmed Jackson's cold heart, who had cared for the twins as if they were her own, became the scapegoat. Morgan watched the council crumble under her manipulation, satisfaction flickering in her eyes. She didn't reveal that she had betrayed the Silver Fangs, that she had whispered secrets into the ears of Iron Fang's Alpha Tobias. No. Camille was the perfect pawn to take the fall. By the time the council recessed, Morgan had everything she wanted, the council's blessing to take over Silverfang in Jackson's absence. As interim alpha, news traveled quickly. Jackson, still caged in a silver-bound cell deep in Iron Fang territory, received word through whispers carried by his captured warriors. "Morgan has taken the council. She blamed Camille. They believe she betrayed you." Jackson clenched his fists, fury overtaking his entire being. Not at Camille, but at himself, for trusting her. The pain was sharper than any physical blow. A cocktail of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak twisted inside him. But deep down, a part of him screamed that it couldn't be true. Camille couldn't have betrayed him. Not the woman who laughed with his daughters. Not the woman whose scent haunted his dreams. Meanwhile, in the quiet sanctuary of the lake house, Camille remained hidden with the twins. She had done everything to keep them safe, never lighting fires at night, never using phones, keeping all windows shuttered. But food and water had run low. One afternoon she left the lake house to drive to a nearby hidden grocer deep in werewolf territory. The girls were safe, nestled inside with a fireplace gently crackling. She wore a hoodie and sunglasses, blending into the background, but her scent, familiar and unmistakable to wolves, betrayed her. On the way back, just as the lake house came into view through the trees, she sensed it. Too late. The ambush. Out of the woods emerged wolves cloaked in Silverfang sigils, but they weren't the loyal guards of Jackson. These were wolves who had pledged allegiance to Morgan. Their eyes were cold, their stance aggressive. Camille tried to run, but they had been tracking her. A dart pierced her side, laced with wolfsbane. She stumbled, fell. Morgan approached slowly, her smirk cruel and triumphant. "Thought you could run forever, little fox," she whispered. "You should have left while you had the chance." Camille growled weakly, but her limbs betrayed her. "You framed me. I simply exposed the truth you were too cowardly to admit." Morgan circled her like a predator. "You'll go down in history as the girl who nearly ruined Silverfang. And now you'll disappear, quietly. You think hiding with my daughters makes you their mother? You're nothing but a traitor, and now you'll pay for it." As Camille lost consciousness, the last thing she saw was Morgan ordering the others to leave the girls untouched, for now. Then everything faded to black. The world was shifting again, and this time, the fall might be greater than anything Camille or Jackson could have prepared for. Chapter 11. The Chamber of Truths. The chamber was cold, silent, and steeped in despair. Deep beneath Morgan's newly claimed Silverfang fortress, the walls of rough stone swallowed light and hope alike. Camille lay on the floor, her once radiant hair matted and dull, her skin pale from days without food or water. Every breath she took was shallow, her strength slowly ebbing away. Her hands were chained to the wall, and the only sound was the slow drip of water from a pipe overhead, mocking her thirst. Morgan visited her every day. She never brought food or comfort, only venomous words and twisted truths. On the 7th day, Morgan entered the chamber with her usual smug smile, her steps echoing as she approached. Camille looked up weakly, her body aching, her lips cracked. "You think you were betrayed by Jackson? That he was the monster in your story?" Morgan sneered, kneeling so they were eye to eye. "You poor, foolish girl, it was never Jackson." Camille's breath hitched. Morgan leaned in closer. "It was me. I destroyed Tobias. I framed Jackson for it. Your father never even saw it coming. I leaked the Silverfang Blood Moon secret to Tobias myself, just to see both packs crumble from within." Camille blinked slowly, trying to understand the magnitude of what she had just heard. Her entire life, her mission, her hatred, had been built on a lie. She had hated the wrong person, betrayed the wrong man. Rage erupted inside her like wildfire. She tried to speak, but her voice was raw. "Why?" Morgan grinned, standing up. "Because I could. Because I wanted everything Jackson had, and if I couldn't have it, I'd see it all burn." Unbeknownst to Morgan, 2 small shadows were hiding in the darkened hallway just beyond the chamber door, Mara and Clara. The twins, their hearts pounding in their tiny chests, had followed Morgan. Their innocent eyes had seen and heard everything. Their faith in their mother, shattered. Tears rolled silently down Clara's cheeks, and Mara clenched her little fists. Camille had always loved them, protected them, and now she was suffering for something she never did. When Morgan left the chamber, locking the door behind her, the girls waited until the hallway was clear. They crept forward, their tiny fingers fumbling with the set of stolen keys they had taken from Morgan's cloak earlier. Camille lay limp, but her eyes fluttered open when she heard the soft whisper. "Camille, it's us." She gasped when she saw Mara and Clara. "What? How did you—" "We heard everything," Mara said. "We know the truth. We know you're not the enemy." Clara worked the key into the lock, tears streaking her cheeks. With a final twist, the shackles fell away. Camille collapsed into their arms, weak but overwhelmed by emotion. She wrapped her arms around them, holding them tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Thank you, girls." As they helped her to her feet, the bond between them deepened. No bloodline or prophecy could be stronger than the love they now shared. They weren't just girls under her care. They were family. Together they would escape, together they would fight, and together they would bring the truth to light. Camille's heart beat with new purpose. It was no longer just about love or betrayal. It was about justice, for herself, for Jackson, for the daughters who had shown her the greatest loyalty. And for the first time in days, hope bloomed. The Chamber of Truths had become the birthplace of their rebellion. Chapter 12. A Daughter's Defiance. The stars shimmered above the lake house, but peace had become a fragile dream. Camille and the girls returned under the veil of night, their steps careful, weary from the trauma they'd endured. But as they approached, Camille halted in surprise. Silver Fang soldiers, silent, vigilant, stood around the property, their presence a wall of strength and loyalty. They were Jackson's wolves, those loyal to their true alpha, stationed there to guard his heart, his daughters, and now Camille. The girls ran into the house, giggling with a kind of joy that only children could still find in such chaos. Camille, however, remained outside. She stared into the forest that surrounded the estate, the full moon casting silver shadows across the earth. Her heart ached for Jackson. He was still imprisoned, broken, and she couldn't bear the thought of leaving him behind. In the days that followed, Camille transformed into something more than a caretaker. She trained Mara and Clara in combat, shifting, and self-defense. It was no longer about ballet lessons or bedtime stories. It was survival. The girls listened, learned, and grew stronger, just like their father would have wanted. But Camille couldn't sit still. The longer Jackson remained in the hands of Iron Fang, the more unbearable the guilt became. So she made a decision, a dangerous, defiant one. That night, cloaked in shadows, she slipped through the woods and crossed into Iron Fang territory. Her childhood memories of the land guided her silently. She moved like a ghost, slipping past guards and old friends turned strangers. In the depths of Iron Fang's stronghold, she found Jackson. He was chained, weakened by the blood moon's after effects, his shirt torn, his body marked by neglect and wounds. But when their eyes met, something shifted in him. He stood taller, even as his body trembled. "Camille," he whispered, voice hoarse and cracked. "You came." She knelt by him, unchaining his wrists with trembling hands. "Of course I came. I'm not leaving you behind." With his weight pressed against her shoulder, they slipped out. The guards didn't stop them. Why would they? Camille had been one of them. She knew the hidden paths, the blind spots. But just as they reached the outer boundary, a large figure blocked their path. Alpha Tobias. He stared at his daughter and the man she held up, bloodied and battered. "Why?" Tobias growled, his voice heavy with disappointment and disbelief. "Why would you betray your own blood for him?" Camille's heart pounded, but she stood tall. "I didn't plan for this. I didn't expect to fall for him, for the girls. I came to destroy him," she said honestly, her voice trembling. "But he's not the monster you made him out to be. He gave me purpose, trust, and love. His daughters, they made me feel whole again. I found joy in a place I was supposed to bring down." Tobias's brows furrowed. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Camille continued, "but I won't turn my back on love. Not like you did after Mother died." Jackson, barely conscious, lifted his head with great effort. "She's everything," he murmured. "Camille changed everything, for me, for my girls." The raw emotion in his voice, his confession, echoed in the cold night. Tobias's stern expression faltered. He remembered the young girl he once loved, the innocence of a past long buried. For a moment, he saw Camille not as a traitor, but as a daughter who had found her own path to love. Chapter 13. A Father's Choice. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a silver glow over the Iron Fang territory. Alpha Tobias stood before Camille and Jackson, his expression unreadable. The wind howled around them like the spirits of old wolves whispering secrets in the night. Camille stood tall, shielding Jackson's weakened body behind her as Tobias took a slow step forward. His eyes weren't filled with rage, they were clouded with memories. "I loved your mother," Tobias said, voice thick with old sorrow, "and I see her in you, fierce, stubborn, loyal." Camille's hands trembled at her sides. "I never meant to betray you, Father. I never expected to love him, or the girls. But I do. I would die for them." Jackson groaned beside her, barely able to stand, but his grip tightened on her hand. "And I love her," he whispered hoarsely, his voice roughened by days of torture. "Camille changed everything for me. She made me believe again." Tobias closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. "Then go. But know this. If you're wrong about him, if he ever hurts you, no wolf, no moon, no heaven will protect him from me." "I wouldn't want it any other way," she replied. The silence that followed was deafening. Tobias turned away, shoulders hunched beneath the weight of years and wars and the ruin of a pack legacy he had mourned for far too long. "Before I change my mind." "Go, and don't come back," Tobias said. Camille's heart broke and healed at the same time. She helped Jackson walk, his arm over her shoulder, as they limped away from the heart of Iron Fang, past guards who did not stop her. A single tear slipped down Tobias's cheek. As they reached the Silver Fang border, they found Mara and Clara waiting beneath the whispering trees, bundled in cloaks, their faces alight with joy and worry. They rushed toward their father, throwing themselves into his arms, even as he staggered under their weight. "We knew you'd come back," Clara whispered, eyes wide with unshed tears. "Camille said you would," Mara added, looking up at Camille with pride. They were not alone behind the girls. A contingent of Silver Fang soldiers stood at attention, having trailed the girls for protection. With a soft nod, Camille led the group back to the lake house. It was near dawn by the time they arrived. The forest was quiet, only the distant hoots of owls and chirping crickets breaking the silence. The lake house welcomed them with warm lights and familiar walls, a sanctuary amidst the storm. Jackson was given medical attention, his wounds cleaned and bandaged by Camille's gentle hands. Yet, though his body began to heal, his eyes never softened when they met hers. He sat in the master bedroom later that night, staring out the window at the lake glimmering under the stars. His heart was torn. He had loved Camille, maybe still did, but the betrayal cut deep. Camille lay on her bed in the room across the hall, staring up at the ceiling. The space between them felt like an abyss. She could feel the distance in his silence, the heartbreak behind his eyes. She closed her eyes and replayed every moment of their time together, every laugh, every secret glance, every whispered word. She loved him. She loved his daughters. She had betrayed her mission, her pack, and risked her life because of that love. But would it ever be enough? In his room, Jackson clenched his fists. Everything he'd fought for, his daughters, his estate, his pack, had been upended in a whirlwind of secrets and betrayal. But he couldn't deny what he'd seen in Camille's eyes when she faced her father for him. He couldn't forget the strength she'd shown, and the way the girls looked at her, trusted her, loved her. He wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. But maybe, just maybe, he wasn't ready to let go either. Outside, the moon began to sink, and the sky bled into dawn. Somewhere between darkness and light, two hearts lay broken but not yet beyond repair. And love, silent and aching, waited patiently in the space between. Chapter 14. Hideout by the lake. The lake shimmered like glass beneath the warm spring sun. Tucked away deep within the protective embrace of the forest stood a hidden wooden cottage, rustic yet elegant, nestled beside the lake's edge. The hideout was known only to the most trusted of the Silver Fang pack. Here the world seemed to pause. No pack wars, no betrayals, no burdens of leadership. Just peace. For now. Jackson Silverfang lay quietly on a long couch before the fireplace, his muscular frame bandaged and tense from the battle wounds he had suffered. Days had passed since they escaped Iron Fang territory, yet the pain of betrayal and confusion lingered heavier than any physical injury. His daughters, Mara and Clara, bustled around him like little guardians, helping with meals, bringing water, whispering jokes to make him smile. But Jackson remained silent. He hadn't spoken to Camille. Camille, who now occupied the room across the hall, had taken on the role of caregiver with quiet devotion. She cooked, cleaned, dressed his wounds, and cared for the girls. She kept her distance, knowing the storm of mistrust raged behind Jackson's eyes. She couldn't blame him. Each night she sat by her window, staring out at the lake as the moonlight danced across its surface. The tranquil view didn't ease her guilt. She had lied, hid her identity, kept secrets that threatened everything. The twins noticed the growing space between their father and the woman they had come to love like a second mother. At first they kept quiet, believing the silence would break with time, but each passing day grew heavier. The air in the cottage was thick with everything unsaid. Finally, one rainy evening, Mara stood at the foot of her father's bed, her arms crossed tightly. Clara sat beside him, fiddling with the edge of the blanket. "Daddy," Clara whispered, "why won't you talk to Camille?" Jackson turned his head slightly but said nothing. "We know you're angry," Mara added, "but she saved us. You should know the truth." He blinked. "The truth?" "Yes," Clara nodded, her voice trembling. "We heard everything. That night Camille was taken by Morgan. We were hiding behind the stairwell. We heard Morgan. At the mention of his ex Luna's name, Jackson's jaw clenched. She was the one who told Alpha Tobias of Iron Fang about the blood moon. She was the traitor all along, not you. She framed you, Daddy. She made Alpha Tobias hate you. And she tortured Camille." Jackson's world shifted. Mara's eyes were wet. "Camille didn't tell you because she didn't want to cause more pain. But we thought, maybe if you knew the truth, you'd understand why she risked everything. If she was bad, why would she do all that for us?" His throat tightened. Emotions he had buried began to rise. Guilt, sorrow, regret. "I'm sorry," he murmured, pulling both girls into his arms. "I'm so sorry you had to go through any of this." "It's not your fault," Mara whispered, "and it's not hers either." Later that night, after the girls had fallen asleep, Jackson stood outside Camille's door. Through the narrow crack he could see her curled on the bed, a blanket draped over her legs, her red hair glowing softly under the moonlight coming from the window. She was looking out at the lake again, as if hoping the waters would wash away all the pain. He knocked gently and stepped in. Camille turned, startled, but said nothing. He sat beside her, both of them silent for a moment, listening to the soft rustle of the trees outside. "I should have known," Jackson said at last. "You were never the enemy. I let my anger blind me. I let you suffer in silence." Camille blinked fast, biting her lip. "I should have told you who I was from the beginning. I didn't want to ruin the trust we were building. I was scared. You were protecting my girls," he whispered, his voice raw. "You were protecting all of us. And I turned my back on you." Camille looked down and slowly met his gaze. "I never stopped caring, Jackson, not even when it hurt." He leaned in, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You've been my mate this whole time." Her breath hitched. "I knew from the first moment I saw you. But I didn't want to push you. I didn't want to use fate as an excuse." Camille's eyes welled with tears. "You should have told me, I know." And then there were no more words. He leaned forward and kissed her, deeply and slowly, as if tasting truth for the first time. Her hands found his shoulders, and he drew her close until their hearts beat in perfect rhythm. Outside, the moon watched silently as the lovers found each other again. He laid her back gently, eyes locked with hers, and whispered, "Mine." She responded in kind, always. Their wolves stirred. His was fierce and protective. Hers was soft and wild. They mated under the full moon's blessing, their marks bonding them forever. What began in secrecy was now sealed in devotion. The cold space between them had melted into fire. In the hideout by the lake, beneath stars that had witnessed centuries of stories, a new love was born, not just between mates, but between souls healed by truth, forgiveness, and fate. Tomorrow their battles would resume, but tonight they had each other. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Chapter 15, Rebirth of the Silver Fangs. The golden light of dawn filtered through the tall, lace-draped windows of the lake house, gently nudging Camille from her slumber. She stirred softly, her body still humming from the night before. Her hand rose instinctively to her neck, fingers grazing the mark that now bound her eternally to Alpha Jackson Silverfang. The warmth of his presence still lingered on her skin, his scent wrapped around her like a second skin. The bond was complete. In the next room, laughter erupted. Mara and Clara had risen early, their giggles filling the house like music. They had seen the bond mark peeking from Camille's collar when she came down to prepare breakfast. The twins exchanged a mischievous glance, then burst into delighted laughter. "You look different, Camille," Clara teased with a knowing smirk. "Yeah," Mara added, "you're glowing. Did something magical happen last night?" Camille blushed furiously, trying to hide the mark with her hair. I just slept well," she muttered, her voice barely audible. Then, Alpha Jackson strolled into the room, tall and broad-shouldered, the sun catching the identical bond mark on the side of his neck. The twins squealed. "Daddy!" they cried in unison, rushing to him. They hugged him tightly, burying their faces into his sides. Jackson chuckled, ruffling their hair. "I guess you two noticed," he said, eyes twinkling. "We're not blind," Clara said, pretending to roll her eyes. "We've got a real family now," Mara whispered. Camille's heart melted at the sight. These girls had found something many never did, unconditional love and a true home. Weeks passed in blissful harmony. Jackson, now fully recovered, began training with Camille and the twins. The mornings at the lake house echoed with howls, grunts, and laughter as the small family honed their skills, both in human and wolf forms. Camille's strength had grown immensely. The twins were fierce and agile, their abilities surpassing even Jackson's expectations. They were ready. The Silver Fangs would rise again. As the sun began to set on a crisp spring evening, they stood at the edge of the lake, the waters calm and reflective. "Tomorrow we take our home back," Jackson said, his voice strong, unwavering. Camille nodded. Together, the twins grinned, excitement lighting their faces. "Let's go show Morgan what a real family looks like." The return to the Silver Fang pack was nothing short of epic. They traveled with loyal soldiers, wolves who had stood by Jackson through his exile, others who had long awaited his return. As they reached the pack gates, the air trembled with anticipation. Some guards stood frozen at first, unsure if it was truly Jackson. But when he stepped forward, tall and commanding, his aura undeniable, they dropped to their knees. "Alpha Jackson," they whispered, reverence coating every syllable. With a commanding growl, he reclaimed the Silver Fang throne. The people rejoiced. The weight of oppression lifted as Morgan's reign began to crumble. But Morgan would not go quietly. Her fury erupted like a storm. "You think you can just walk back in?" She spat, stepping into the center of the pack grounds, her eyes blazing with hatred. She lunged at Jackson, but she never reached him. 3 wolves sprang forward in unison, Camille, Clara, and Mara, each one ferocious, protective, and burning with purpose. They clashed with Morgan in a flurry of snarls and speed. Morgan's eyes widened when she realized who was fighting her. "Mara? Clara? I'm your mother. I'd give you the world. I would never hurt you." The twins hesitated only for a second. "You left us," Clara said. "You only want us now because you lost everything else, and later when you have a choice again you'd leave us," Mara added. "You never loved us," they said in unison. Camille stepped forward, her wolf gleaming under the moonlight. "They have a mother, one who stayed, one who chose them." The twins stood beside Camille, unshaken. "She's our real mom," Clara said. "You're just the woman who gave birth to us," Mara finished. Morgan's screams faded into silence. She was defeated. Chapter 16. A Tragic End. The clouds over Silverfang hung low, as if the skies themselves mourned what was to come. Morgan, the once proud Luna of the Silverfang pack, stood alone atop the jagged cliffs that overlooked the valley. The wind tugged at her hair, and tears traced thin lines down her cheeks. Her heart was a storm of emotions: betrayal, rejection, loneliness, and guilt. The image of her daughters, her own flesh and blood, standing hand in hand with Camille, calling her their real mother, echoed through her mind. The love she had once twisted with ambition had turned to ash, and the cold truth of her choices weighed heavily. She had lost everything. The daughters she once bore wanted nothing to do with her. The mate she once shared a life with had reclaimed his throne, not with vengeance, but with love. And the people she sought to rule with fear had turned away from her, choosing compassion over control. Morgan's final blow was not dealt by the Silverfangs. It was delivered by the hollow inside her chest, a gaping void she could no longer fill. Without a word, she stepped closer to the edge. From below, the forest stretched endlessly, peaceful and unaware. Morgan closed her eyes, breathed in the crisp air one last time, and whispered something no one would ever hear. Then she stepped off the cliff. It was Mara who saw her first. The young twin had run up the hillside, curious about the sudden silence that had fallen after the confrontation. Clara was right behind her, clutching Camille's hand. They reached the peak in time to see the white scarf Morgan always wore flutter down through the air like a fallen petal. A cry burst from Mara's throat as she dropped to her knees. Camille pulled both girls to her, hugging them tightly as the sobs came. Jackson arrived moments later, breathing hard. He looked over the cliff's edge, and though no words came, a stillness passed over him. He did not cry. He simply stood, arms clenched, jaw tight, eyes locked on the spot where Morgan disappeared. His wolf growled low inside him, not in rage but in sorrow for a past that could never be fixed. The days that followed were quiet. Silverfang held a small memorial. No crowd gathered, no grand speeches were given. It was a private farewell. The few who had once been close to Morgan paid their respects with bowed heads and lowered eyes. Jackson stood with Camille and the girls, dressed in black, their bond as a family stronger than ever but hearts heavy. Mara and Clara grieved in their own way. Some days they asked about Morgan, what she was like before the bitterness, what dreams she once had. Camille, patient and gentle, never spoke ill of the woman. She listened, offered warmth, and helped them remember without hate. Jackson remained quiet throughout, watching his daughters closely. Guilt curled within him, not for Morgan's end, but for not being able to protect his daughters from the pain. Still, he could not bring himself to mourn Morgan like the others did. Too much had happened. Too much had changed. But he found solace in one truth: his daughters were healing, and Camille, his mate, his Luna, was there to guide them through the storm. Weeks passed. The Silverfang estate breathed with new life. Flowers were planted where thorns once grew. The air was lighter. The girls began smiling again, laughing during training, and sleeping through the night without waking from tears. Camille and Jackson worked together not just as mates, but as parents, holding the family together with unwavering strength. Though Morgan's end was tragic, it was not the end of the Silverfang story. It was, in many ways, a new beginning, and from the ashes of betrayal, a stronger, more united pack rose, bound not by blood alone, but by loyalty, love, and the unbreakable bond of family. Chapter 17. The New Luna. The sun filtered through the tall pine trees, casting a golden hue over the Silverfang estate. The air was crisp, a hint of fresh beginnings lingering on the wind. Weeks had passed since Morgan's tragic end. In that time, the Silverfang pack had begun to breathe again. The weight of sorrow slowly lifted, replaced by something rare and precious: hope. Camille moved gracefully through the estate grounds, now fully integrated into the life of the pack. No longer the outsider with a secret, she had become something far more valuable. Their guiding light, their protector, their future Luna. She took time each day to learn the ancient customs and rituals of the Silver Fangs. The elders, once cautious of her presence, now watched her with a nod of quiet approval. She listened when they spoke, honored the ways of the wolves, and carried herself with dignity. But it was with Mara and Clara that Camille's light shone brightest. The twins adored her, shadowing her every step, soaking in her stories, her wisdom, and the fierce love she gave so freely. She trained them personally now, guiding them not only in self-defense, but in diplomacy, empathy, and leadership. Jackson watched it all unfold like a man waking from a long, cold winter. He'd returned not just to health, but to purpose. The alpha in him had healed, and with that, the man had found a renewed fire. His empire in the human world, temporarily overseen by his most trusted allies, welcomed him back. But it was his alpha duties in the supernatural realm that demanded the most attention. The council of surrounding packs had been waiting. There had been rumors, whispers of a broken alpha, but Jackson wasn't. He arrived at the council grounds with Camille by his side, the bond mark glowing faintly at the curve of her neck. And when he stood before them, he didn't flinch. "I am Alpha Jackson Silverfang," he said. "And this is my mate, Camille Blackthorn, your new Luna." A silence fell over the gathered wolves. Then, like thunder after a long drought, the howls of approval rang out. Camille had won them over, and now the pack stood united. The Silverfangs were whole again. Preparations began almost immediately. The pack was eager to celebrate the dawn of a new era, and Camille's Luna ceremony would be one of grandeur and reverence. Yet Jackson had something else planned too, a surprise that would bridge their two worlds, human and wolf. One evening, as the forest shimmered under the rising moon, Jackson told Camille to get dressed and meet him outside. When she got ready and went outside, she saw him, she approached him, and he took Camille's hand and led her to a private jet waiting on the estate's landing strip. No explanation, just a kiss on the knuckles and a whispered, "Trust me." They landed in Paris. The city of lights welcomed them with a warm breeze and the scent of blooming roses. Camille had barely caught her breath when they arrived at an elite gathering, one of the Billionaire's charity galas that Jackson hosted annually. The ballroom was ablaze with crystal chandeliers, silk gowns, and camera flashes. In the center of it all, Jackson took the stage. "Tonight is not just about charity," he announced. "It's about love and new beginnings." He turned to Camille, who stood frozen in awe. "I want the world to know what the Silverfangs already do," he said, kneeling with a box in his hand. "Camille Ironfang, my mate, my heart, my future, will you marry me?" Tears streamed down her face as she said yes. The crowd erupted into applause, but for Jackson and Camille, the world faded. All that remained was their love. The wedding followed weeks later, back home at the Silverfang estate. Under the full moon, in a forest clearing lined with silver roses and flickering lanterns, they pledged their lives to one another. The entire pack gathered, from the youngest pups to the oldest elders, to witness the bond. Camille wore a gown woven with threads blessed by the moon spirits, and Jackson donned ceremonial armor, marking both his human and alpha self. The twins stood beside them, joy lighting their eyes as they looked up at the couple. "I vow to protect you," Jackson whispered, "to love you in this life and all the ones to come." "I vow to stand beside you," Camille replied, "to lead with you, love with you, and never let you face the darkness alone." As their lips met, a wave of energy rippled through the trees. The spirits of the forest stirred. The Silverfangs howled in unison, a chorus of devotion and renewal. The Silverfangs had found their Luna. Chapter 18: The Seed of Peace. The gentle hush of spring swept over the Silverfang territory. Flowers bloomed along the stone paths of the estate, the Silverfang mansion basking under golden sunlight. Peace, for the first time in years, reigned across the land. The warriors trained under calm skies, the pack thrived, and inside the grand halls of the estate, A new kind of joy was about to blossom. Camille stood on the balcony of the lake house, her fingers resting on the marble railing as she looked over the lake. The same lake where months ago she and Jackson had found their healing now reflected a serenity that mirrored her heart. She rested a hand over her rounded belly, a gentle smile tugging at her lips. Inside, Mara and Clara rushed about excitedly, their twin energies lighting up every room. They had taken it upon themselves to prepare everything for their baby brother's arrival. Jackson, meanwhile, balanced his time between his pack duties and doting on Camille with all the care of a man deeply in love. The Silver Fang pack watched with warmth and reverence. Camille was no longer the outsider nanny or the mysterious red-haired spy. She was Luna, beloved, strong, nurturing. Her strength and loyalty had become woven into the very heart of Silver Fang. When the time came, the entire mansion held its breath. It was a quiet night under the full moon when Camille went into labor. Jackson remained by her side, gripping her hand, whispering encouragement and wiping sweat from her brow. The pack's healer, a wise old woman named Elder Marin, oversaw the birth with experienced hands and a calm spirit. And as the first cry echoed through the mansion, time seemed to pause. He was perfect, a baby boy with sleek black curls, eyes like his mother's, and the fierce spirit of both his mother and father. Camille held him against her chest, her eyes brimming with tears. Jackson wrapped his arms around both of them, kissing Camille's forehead as emotion overtook him. Outside the birthing chamber, Mara and Clara waited with anxious hearts. When Jackson finally emerged holding the baby in his arms, the girls let out joyful shrieks and rushed forward into the birthing chamber. Clara kissed the baby's head, while Mara cradled his tiny fingers. "He looks just like both of you," Clara whispered. "I think he looks like an alpha already," Mara added, her eyes gleaming. Camille chuckled softly from her bed as the girls climbed in beside her, snuggling close to their new brother. For hours they remained like that, together, whole, safe. That evening, as the moon reached its peak, the Silver Fang's pack gathered in the courtyard of the mansion for a quiet celebration. Candles floated on the lake, and music played softly. Jackson stood beside Camille, who cradled their son. "I want to name him Tobias," Jackson said suddenly, turning to her. Camille blinked in surprise. "Tobias?" He nodded. "Your father. If he hadn't sent you to me, I would have missed the greatest gift of my life. He thought he was sending a spy, but he gave me a Luna. He gave my daughters a mother. And now, he gave me a son." Tears filled Camille's eyes. She nodded and whispered, "Tobias Silverfang." The crowd erupted in cheers and howls of approval. The name echoed across the woods, and the spirits of their ancestors stirred in acknowledgement. The Alpha heir had arrived. Weeks passed, and life in Silverfang bloomed with new energy. Mara and Clara took turns watching over their brother, who had already begun to show signs of a strong, commanding aura. Camille remained close, guiding them all with her warmth. Jackson returned to managing his empire with renewed strength, now supported by a partner who was both queen of his heart and Luna of his people. Together, they led the Silverfangs into a golden age. And in the nursery room of the Silverfang mansion, little Tobias gurgled happily, unaware of the legacy he was born into. But all knew the truth. With his birth, a new chapter had begun. The seed of peace had been sown, and from it, a mighty legacy would rise. Chapter 19: The Legacy of Love. The news of Camille's safe delivery echoed far beyond the borders of Silverfang, traveling through whispers of wind and excited messenger wolves to reach the mountains of Ironfang. In his throne room, Alpha Tobias, stern, seasoned, and usually unreadable, broke into an uncharacteristic smile when he learned that Camille had given birth to a healthy baby boy. But it was the child's name that shook his core, Tobias Silverfang. Named after him, he paced the marble floors of his stone palace, emotions warring inside him. It was an honor he hadn't expected, not after the past wounds, not after the rift he'd once created between his daughter and himself. But the name, It meant something. It meant forgiveness. It meant healing. Within days, Alpha Tobias journeyed to Silverfang, flanked by his most trusted guards, but unarmed. He came not as a warrior or a rival Alpha, but as a father, a grandfather, and a man seeking peace. The Silverfang gates opened to him not with suspicion, but with welcome. When Tobias entered the grand Silverfang estate, the scent of fresh pine and blooming roses filled the air, but his gaze searched for only one thing: his daughter. Camille met him at the door, holding her newborn, his tiny eyes blinking against the morning light. She hesitated, then took a brave step forward. Tobias, the iron-hearted alpha of Ironfang, softened in that moment, his eyes glistening. Camille handed over the child with trembling hands. "This is Tobias Silverfang," she said softly. The old alpha cradled the boy with surprising gentleness. His throat tightened as he looked down at the child's sleek black curled hair and warm eyes that mirrored Camille's. In that quiet moment, decades of bitterness and silent regret melted away. "I never imagined I'd see this day," Tobias whispered. Camille placed a hand on her father's shoulder. "Neither did I. But fate knew better." Jackson soon joined them. For a second, the air between the two alphas was thick with the weight of the past, but Tobias extended his hand, and Jackson accepted it. "No more war," Tobias said. "No more blood," Jackson replied. Together they crafted and signed a treaty of peace between the Silverfang and Ironfang packs. Old grudges buried, and old wounds finally began to scar over. Days later, the Silverfang Council summoned Camille to a formal gathering. The council, cloaked in ceremonial robes, sat in a semicircle around her, eyes sharp and unreadable. Camille stood before them, her head high and her voice steady as she recounted her journey, from arriving as a live-in nanny to becoming the heart of their alpha's household. She spoke of her pain, of Morgan's betrayal, of the moment she had chosen the safety of Mara and Clara over her own life. She told them how love, not duty, had guided her. When she finished, silence followed. Then Elder Alina, the oldest council member, stood with a bowed head. "We wronged you. We let fear cloud our judgment, and rejected you the moment Morgan declared your Ironfang blood. But you have proven what honor truly is." Another elder spoke. "You defended our heirs when their own blood turned against them. You became the mother they never had. And now you have birthed the future of Silverfang." In one voice the council declared, "You are the Luna of Silverfang, not just by bond, but by right." The pack celebrated Camille with a feast beneath the full moon. Stories of her bravery spread like wildfire, reaching even distant clans. Jackson, honoring their new alliance, introduced Alpha Tobias to his network of powerful human-world business partners. Tobias, impressed by the scale of Jackson's empire, secured a contract that brought wealth and opportunity to Ironfang. It was more than just a deal, it was a symbol of trust. Mara and Clara, ever protective of their baby brother, began training with renewed purpose. Camille mentored them in both strength and wisdom, raising them to be kind, just, and powerful. Peace blanketed the land like snowfall. Rival packs, once bitter and territorial, sent emissaries requesting truce. One by one, treaties were signed. The supernatural world shifted. Alpha Jackson and Luna Camille stood as symbols of change, of forgiveness, unity, and love, and as the stars blinked above the Silverfang estate that night, the legacy of war faded behind them. In its place bloomed something far greater, a legacy of love. Epilogue. Happy ever, Alpha. The sun rose gently over the lake house, casting warm golden light through the open windows and dancing across the dew-laced garden. The morning air was thick with peace, the kind that only came after war, heartbreak, and healing. Camille stood barefoot in the garden, cradling baby Tobias in her arms. The infant cooed softly, his sleek black curled hair catching the light like threads of moonlight. His eyes, so much like Camille's, blinked slowly in awe of the world. Mara and Clara, now radiant teens, darted through the flower beds barefoot. laughing as they chased butterflies and tumbled through the lush greenery. The laughter of the Silver Fang heirs had returned to the land, a melody the estate hadn't known in years. Alpha Jackson stood by the veranda, hands tucked into the pockets of his black slacks. His eyes never strayed far from Camille and the children. His gaze was thoughtful, filled with pride and admiration. There was a time when he believed happiness was a dream meant for others, a fleeting illusion for someone with no mate, no trust, and no peace. But now he saw the universe's design. Camille had entered his life as a nanny for his twins, sent by a man who once hated him. And yet, that same man was now his ally and father-in-law, and his daughter the light of Jackson's life. A woman who'd earned her place not just beside him, but above and beyond, protecting their children, their pack, and his heart. Their journey had been brutal, tangled with betrayal and blood, but love had been their compass. Inside the Silver Fang estate, things had changed too. The halls that once echoed only with silence and duty now carried the sound of life. Mara's piano notes, Clara's constant chatter, the soft wails of baby Tobias in the night, Camille's soothing lullabies. The staff had grown to adore their Luna, whose kindness and strength balanced Alpha Jackson's commanding presence. Together they ruled not from fear, but through unity. Camille never stopped learning the ways of the pack, its rituals, its languages, its laws. She'd become more than a Luna, she was a symbol of hope. When she carried Tobias through the market, pack members greeted her with deep bows and warm smiles. The people had not forgotten how she stood by Jackson, how she bled, protected him and his kids, and loved without condition. Jackson, too, had changed. He was still fierce, still every bit the alpha who could silence a room with a glare. But now, there was a softness, a calm fire behind his gaze. At night, he would walk into the nursery just to watch Tobias sleep, or find Camille wrapped in her robe, sipping tea under the stars, and pull her close in silence. On one such evening, the full moon rose like a guardian above the lake house. Jackson stepped into the moonlight with Camille by his side. She held Tobias in a soft white wrap against her chest. Mara and Clara trailed behind, dressed in their wolfskin cloaks. The scent of pine, lake water, and family surrounded them. They shifted beneath the silver moon, not with urgency or fury, but in celebration. Camille's wolf, white and elegant, carried baby Tobias in a sling designed by Jackson himself. Jackson's massive silver-gray wolf stood beside her like a sentinel. The twins ran ahead, their youthful brown wolves playful, untamed but graceful. That night, the Silver Fangs ran as a family, through the woods and beyond the rivers, across familiar trails and hidden paths. They howled not for dominance or war, but for life, for legacy, for the love that bound them. When they returned just before dawn, muddy and panting with joy, Camille leaned into Jackson. "We made it," she whispered. He looked down at her, his eyes soft. "No," he said, brushing her cheek. "We built it." Their lips met in a kiss of promise and fulfillment. The Silver Fang legacy was no longer marred by shadows. It was reborn in light, in laughter, in love, and under the watchful moon it would endure forever. If you enjoyed this audiobook, subscribe to my channel for more interesting audiobooks like this. Save the playlist for more audiobooks. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Check out new audiobooks in my channel. Do you think Morgan really died when she fell off the cliff? Comment your answers in the comments section. Thanks for listening.